but what I'm saying as far as ease of use, so ease of use is cool, but because of ease of use, we have something like the Stop Killing Games initiative. And I think that kind of comes about because people are wanting to become or make things easier by getting digital copies. But then that in turn, that also makes it easy for these developers to also stop live service on these games. For example, one of our beloved games on that we talk about on this platform all the time, and Hacker already mentioned it, is Anthem. The game came out, it had a service,
Yeah. Oh my God.
and they killed the service. You know what I'm saying? So now that the service is dead, you can no longer play the game, really. So what are your opinions right now on this? I know LZ, you were one of the main ones that brought up the Stop Killing Games initiative earlier this week while we were talking in the chat. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, man, I just think it's interesting. I obviously agree with the consumers. I do think, even though it's kind of tough now, I would like games to last if you purchase it. I mean, for me, I grew up on Sega Genesis, and I'm pretty sure you could go get those cartridges, load those bad boys up, and you could play Sonic the Hedgehog right now.
Right now.
Real quick, can you give a quick summary of what it is? Because I have a general idea of it.
So the Stop Killing Games initiative has actually came up. It was a campaign that was founded by a YouTuber. His name was Ross Scott, and it started back in 2024. And he pretty much was challenging the gaming industry on practices of permanently disabling always online titles. So in places like the EU, they had a tremendous amount of like valid signatures to support their initiative here. I mean, like over 1 million signatures of people saying if they purchase a game, whether they purchase the game digitally or if they purchase a physical one, if there's a online component to it, they want to always be able to play this. We feel like we're losing ownership because when we buy something, because it's digital and because it's online, at any point in time, it could disappear. And now I technically don't own this game anymore. So I think that's where the Stop Killing Games initiative start from. They actually do have a website too that you can visit. And the website is stopkillinggames.com. So you probably check that out.
For it.
And just
so
a little bit more context, really quick. So it originated because of the game The Crew. Basically, the servers went offline, and the players of The Crew ultimately they weren't able to play the game because I believe the games required always online access. So that started the snowball. People saying, "Hey, if I buy the game, I should own it, and I should have some way to play the game because I love this game." And really quick to wrap up. So that started the whole petition, which got millions of signatures. And I think like the politicians, they started getting into it. And then basically they started talking to like some of the studios and ultimately decided, hey, you know what? I think you're right. I don't think you'll be able to support these games indefinitely because the companies are saying, hey, some of these games require servers to be online. And like financially, you can't possibly expect us to keep every game we publish always working forever. But just to wrap up, goes to my point. Hey, Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, and 3, 3D Blast, I can play those right now.
So there's three core things to the Stop Killing Games initiatives, which is inner life plans, which we touched on, consumer ownership, right? Because it that's sort of the quagmire to digital games is that the more we make games digital, the more that we depend on companies to have servers running that they did now have to pay for to maintain our ability to actually play the game over the life of the game, right? And who's to say how long that's going to be? 80 years from now, if I want to play Grand Theft Auto 5, I want to play Grand Theft Auto 5 and it should be able to run. And then the obviously preservation of the medium, right? Is protecting video games as a culture and creative medium. And that is supposedly the three pillars of the Stop Killing Games initiative itself.
I understand what it is now, and I foresee this going nowhere. And the reason why I foresee this going nowhere is because there's a very, very simple workaround for this.
Really?
At least from the company's perspective. It's as simple as this. In the terms of agreement to play this game, you recognize that this game will be disabled or cut off at a certain point in time, which means
and you're okay with that.
No, I'm not saying I'm okay with it. What I'm saying is the business can just do this, which means if they put it in the terms of agreement, you signed up from the start saying, hey, this game will only last for X amount of years, and then after that, there's no guarantee that it will be online.
So that is the thing, though, that because in the terms of service, they are already putting in that they're classifying the game as a revocable license that could make the property invalid or not accessible in the future. So this is a thing that is happening right now in the terms of service of some of these games. I think the problem here is that as media is growing, as games are growing, and we mentioned earlier that games can no longer fit on a standard Blu-ray disc, and we haven't found the technology that's allowing us to fit bigger games on these CDs. It kind of leaves us in a place where we don't have a choice but to be on an online server or to download these games digitally. So
I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily true, though, right? We talked about physical game disc earlier, but really, like
it doesn't
physical
matter.
game. I think this is the gaming companies intentionally doing this in order to in order for, in my personal opinion, a master plan to move towards live service games that can continue to generate income in order to, have a profit model that allows them to kind of scale in terms of profitability long term. But I don't think that's necessarily working out for them. And a lot of the consumers essentially hate that. I'll make an argument here. Shadow of Mordor came out sometime in 2014 or something like that. And they still allow you, and I think it had the online component to it. They shut those online capabilities down from their multiplayer or always online service, but the core game is still available to play. And I played it on the Steam Deck not 6 months ago. So the fact that some of these companies are saying, oh, we can we can't continue to support these games because it's costing us too much. I honestly think that's cap. Here's another reason I think it's cap is that while games have continued to see an increase or whatever in technology, we stayed with the physical disc, but there's several flaws to the physical disc to begin with, right? When Best Buy, a couple years ago, and I don't know if you guys heard about this, Best Buy stopped selling physical disc in their stores. So we couldn't buy CD, like music CDs or whatever, right? And that's another physical medium where digital streaming became a thing, and we had to subscribe to a monthly service to be able to listen to music. And of course, artists are losing in that medium too, and I think game developers are losing in that same way in the gaming medium, right? So when they stop selling CDs, the flaws to CDs is that, for example, Blu-ray discs, we talked about them, but there's some people are reporting that the physical game after a certain while starts going bad and you can't play the game anymore. So what's the solution to that? Is why aren't we using USB drives? USB-A, USB Type-C, and then we continue to evolve those drives and have them send me a 128. I'm already paying $50 for the game.
Well,
right?
Isn't the USB drive still a digital copy? For example, because you're going to use a USB drive, put it into your system, and then you're going to be downloading the game, and it's
not if it's technically a physical copy. If I have all of the physical file, all of the digital files installed on the physical hardware, right? So That way, I no longer have to depend on the servers, right? Like I no longer have to depend on developer servers, and the excuse that, oh, I have to maintain all of these servers and the cost becomes associated with, that's cap. Send me a USB drive, man. And no, it's not a CD, but just change the game box to have a little crevice in there, and plot the USB drive in there, and I still get the same level of nostalgia and stuff like that. I think that's cap, dude.
They're not.
Yeah.
They are not gonna do that. They just
They're
don't
not.
want.
They're not. And they're not, because it doesn't benefit them long term in order to scale and continue to generate profit. And
We don't
and I think
So
that's where the Stop Killing Games initiative really should make some strong argument. Get some lawyers,
I,
get together, and make this argument. And I don't think that the idea that that it's a bad argument that they're killing games. I think the fact that they're killing games is intentional. It's intentional.
here's my thing. The way that you get the game does not matter because it's talking about the servers that operate the online portion of it. Digital or physical, that doesn't matter.
right,
Correct?
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're saying, sure, cool, we could do that, but it wouldn't change this specific issue. What I think would actually would fix it, and it's happened for some things, it just doesn't happen for every game, is allow people to host their own servers
I
so
was
that they
just
can
going
play the
to
game
say that.
afterwards, right? Because while somebody mentioned it that it's probably not much money for them to host a server to keep an old game running. I would say that is true for larger companies, but you're essentially forcing out smaller companies because obviously this rule would apply to everyone. Say I'm a little indie game developer, I make a server, it gets a little popular, it's getting 1,000 people a week or whatever, and then over the years it drops down to a point where it's unsustainable. Well, that little indie developer, they have to now keep up these servers, and I don't think it's fair to them, right? But if they just gave them the option to let users create their own servers and host it themselves so that they could play the game if they want to, then that relieves them of that responsibility or that payment every month, and it gives the users the players the option of still playing the game years after it has been canceled, so to speak.
I got a question for you, Billion. I know you had like a point you wanted to say. I got a question for you, real quick. So on that whole server thing, right? So let's say if they decided to pass that cost over to the consumer, where it's like, hey, this game is super old, we can't afford to, take on the cost of this, but the cost of this server is this much a month, and find a way to kind of pass it off where it's like it might be like 50 cents subscription for to keep this game going if you love it this much. If you know life this game and you play it every day and you want to keep it going, would you as a consumer be willing to take on that cost of keeping that server
Well,
going
hold up.
as
Are
like
you
a unit?
saying they would host it and I pay a subscription to play it from them? Is that what you're saying?
Possibly, yeah. So
I
like
I'm
take
not
on
doing
the
that. I'll
I
tell you,
wouldn't do
I
that.
wouldn't do that. I couldn't. Yeah, you can host your own servers, but I don't even think you need to do that. I still think the USB drive is a way to cut out servers in general. And if you want to play together with friends,
How do you cut out?
then
How do you cut out a server for an online game?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's okay. So the online component, and thinking in that same vein, right? Of Shadow of Mordor, shut out the online component. If you're talking multiplayer, that's different. But if I just want to play the game, the base game, which I think is one of the core problems now, is if you're shutting off the game entirely, and you're sunsetting games after a while, and we don't have true ownership, put it on a USB drive and give it to me, right? Like when I pre-order the game or I run into GameStop, put it on a USB drive. Change the physical medium. We have the physical medium, and they've sunsetted the physical mediums, and I think that's a reasonable argument to make, to be able to say, okay, we have new technology, that, and we have, right, we talked about the Blu-rays not having enough space. I mean, you could put 150 gigs or whatever the game is on there, or something larger. And would they make the argument that they're going to raise the prices? Possibly, right? And that's one of the considering how expensive memory is. I think that's the one quagmire. I think that's the one quagmire is the physical hardware and memory being so expensive.
I still don't think that is what matters. The physical, like whether it's physical or digital, it's the fact that the game requires to be online, right? That's the thing that would shut it down, right?
Well,
I would
well, I
say
mean, again, still leave online out of it.
No, we're not leaving online out of it because that's the point of the
that's
initiative.
the whole thing. Yeah,
gotcha.
So it's not so much the physical or physical. Yeah, because that's what it is. It's the game requires to be online. That server is no longer there. The game can't verify, so it doesn't allow you to play. If anything,
not the multiplayer. It's referring to game in the case like the crew. Like they're not talking about the online component. It just requires an online component for
online.
So because it's online, they can't access the game at all. So people are saying, "Hey, at the very least, I should have the single player." I don't think people with initiative care about the multiplayer. That's understandable. You can't keep a story running, but why is the story mode on?
And that's why I brought up Shadow of Mordor's earlier, is because Shadow of Mordor's did exactly that. They shut off the online components and still allow people to play the actual single player game.
That's what I'm going to say.
And as long as you own the digital copy, then it doesn't matter.
That single player game, for that game that you're talking about, is that single player game and needs online capability to play single player? If not, it's not the same thing as what the crew has. For you to play single player on the crew, you need to be have an online service.
Yeah, and I'm saying Shadow of Mordor and their developers did it the right way by not requiring people to have an internet connection that's connected to the servers and then shutting the game off. Right. So they should, at the very least, the single player game should be available and having ownership of it. So that's why I'm saying, like, if this from the single player owner perspective, put it on a USB drive. We're not putting it on a CD drive. If there's not enough memory on there, put it on a USB drive.
So I do have a question, because I do have Shadows of Mordor and I have Shadows of War, and I did beat Shadows of Mordor. But is Shadows of Mordor, is there like a co-op mode on that?
I want to say both, either both, or and maybe I was playing Shadow of War, but one of the two has a online component to it that that they essentially shut off in the game, and I'm drawing a blank on what the specific component is. I'll have to circle back to you on it.
Caveman, you were saying also?
I was just gonna say it. There's a very simple solution. When the game is getting to the end of life, remove that requirement. It's as simple as that. Whether or not companies are going to do that, that's the hard part. I can understand for this Stop Killing Games initiative to force them to do so. I think that would be useful, right? I don't think you can force somebody to pay for something long term, essentially in this case the servers, but you can force them to make a change so that the game is still playable, at least in its solo player or campaign or whatever. I think that is perfectly viable. And
so Shell, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so Shells, just to answer your question, Shadow of Wars has what's known as the online conquest, which I actually never played. I always played the original game and just played through the story mode. But you can you can do attack and defense where you attack castles and stuff like that. Like the whole concept throughout the game was like you would attack the castles or whatever of the orcs, and you would take over their castle, so you can like gain power of whatever throughout the entire map. And then they had an online component that allowed you to do that to other people's castles, and you attack their stuff from. So they have what was known an online conquest feature for Shadow of War.
Okay.